I'm going to tell you an incredible story. I'm a hard-working guy in my early 30s, and for as long as I can remember, I dreamed of having a normal life. You know, many people sometimes underestimate what's ordinary, but I saw things differently. My life was far from ordinary, and it all began from the moment I was born. My mother, she was a warrior, a true heroine. She became pregnant with me when she was very young, and her life turned upside down. My father, who promised to marry her, had a work accident and passed away just a week before the wedding. My mother became a widow even before saying I do. This could have been a tragedy, but in a way, it turned out to be a blessing because my mother was already pregnant with me. Her family didn't view it in a positive light. They thought she shouldn't have me, that I would be a burden to her, born out of wedlock. But my mother had incredible strength. She believed I was a gift left by my father, and she didn't give up on me. No matter what they said, my grandmother, who was angry with my mother, tried to convince her every day to give me up, but my mother didn't yield. She chose to stay with me, even if it meant leaving her entire family behind. She left secretly, as if she were running away, and gave birth to me, her son, all alone. My mother was only 23 years old at the time. Believe it or not, I didn't even know what was happening. I was just a baby. When I think about it now, I can only imagine how scary and painful it must have been for my mother. But she didn't get scared. She simply faced the pain and did what she had to do. And when I finally returned home, my family didn't accept me. They said they were too ashamed of me because of the way my mother had to have me, going out at night all alone. Back then, my child, I was scared, but when I looked at you, innocently smiling, I felt that everything would somehow be alright. Even if my own family didn't accept me, I had you, and that was enough. My mother worked tirelessly, delivering milk in the early morning, working at a restaurant during the day, and taking odd jobs at night. She slept very little, but her dedication to me was infinite. She always said she was proud of it. Life was challenging. Money was tight, but my mother never stopped fighting for us. And, believe me, she was the best mother I could have wished for. The story continues, and you will see how it all unfolds. You know, when I was a teenager, I hated the idea of my mother being a single mother. In fact, I used to make up that my father had passed away when I was little, but as I grew up, I began to see my mother in a completely different light. I realized she was the best person in the world, and there was no one around to help her. It made me realize I needed to be successful in any way I could. While my friends talked about their dreams, I dreamt of a stable job. My goal was to become a teacher, not because I had a burning passion for education or children, but because I wanted financial security and a good retirement plan. However, something magical happened when I became a teacher. I started to love the children and take immense pride in what I did. And while working as a teacher, I managed to buy an apartment on my own. Although I needed a loan, I was deeply grateful for my job because I felt like I was doing something meaningful for my mother. For us, at the beginning of the school year, my students used to ask, "Teacher, don't you have a girlfriend?" In fact, I had a girlfriend for a long time. I met her while preparing for the teaching certification exam, and we dated for 5 years. I passed the exam on the first try, but she continued to face repeated rejections. I knew she was studying for the exam while I was already a teacher, but I never told her anything because our situations were quite different. It was tough because my pride often got hurt. I knew why she was having difficulties. Her family was wealthy and had everything they needed. She didn't take her studies as seriously as I did because she wasn't as eager to become a teacher. When I was preparing for the exam, there were many people in the same struggle as me. But she didn't seem to have the same sense of urgency. She enjoyed going out with her friends and living life to the fullest, seeming not to care as much about passing the exam. Some of my more experienced teacher colleagues advised me to break up with her, but that was something I couldn't do. I had spent so much time with her, and we had so many good memories. Besides, she knew everything about me, about the sensitivity I carried from being labeled as an illegitimate child. She embraced me in the midst of all these uncertainties. My girlfriend and I also had something in common, as we both grew up without fathers. We were a couple who knew each other very well. Although we never said it out loud, we both thought we would get married one day. At least that's what I imagined. The condition was that my girlfriend needed to pass the exam and become a teacher. I eagerly awaited the news that never came. Her preparation for the exam seemed endless, lasting more than 8 years, and in the end, she gave up. Unlike me, who was devastated by the news, she didn't seem discouraged but relieved. She told me, "I think being a teacher is not for me." I was surprised and concerned. But you've studied for so long, don't you think it's a waste? And she told me, I can't even look at a study book without feeling nauseous. I don't want to do it anymore. Many people ask me when I'm going to become a teacher. But what will I do if I don't study? Get a regular job, I encouraged her. We're still young. You have a bachelor's degree from a prestigious university. It might be a little late to start as a novice, but if you put in the effort, you can certainly do well and improve our lives. Then, we can get married faster. She pondered but didn't seem convinced. So, I shared my plans with her, of course. It's not that I don't understand you, but I was frustrated because you didn't seem to have a passion and weren't putting in much effort. To study? Why don't you try one more time? As if your life depended on it. I've already decided that I don't want to study anymore. I found some job opportunities. I'm thinking of working in sales. If I have the skills, I can make good money now. I want to become a saleswoman. She was determined to change her career. My mother seems to have given up on me for failing the exam so many times. And I'm also liking the idea. When I saw my girlfriend make this decision, I thought maybe it was the right path for her. It seemed there was no hope of passing the exam after so many years with that mindset. It was a wise decision. She got her first job in sales after the first interview and quickly adapted to the work. She started earning more money, and after 2 years, we both became successful professionals. Finally, after 10 years of dating, we promised to get married. My mother, who was worried, shed tears of relief. She wondered if her son would ever get married after spending all those years in a relationship. But when I was about to proceed with my wedding, there was one thing that bothered me, because my mother and my girlfriend's mother were very different. My mother had only a high school education, and had worked as a domestic worker for a long time, recently working as a cleaner. In contrast, my girlfriend's mother was in the same situation regarding her husband, but she graduated from a prestigious women's university, and her paternal family was wealthy. So, I heard they gave her a large outdoor activity store to manage. When I thought about marriage, I was concerned about the significant difference in status between the two mothers. It didn't mean I was ashamed of my mother. I was worried if my mother would feel hurt by my future mother-in-law. And where I went next was an expensive, high-end luxury condominium, as expected. Furthermore, the future mother-in-law who greeted me was also from a higher social class. It seemed she wasn't very interested in me, but surprisingly, she wasn't against our marriage. "Welcome," she said. "I'm Heather's mother, nice to meet you." "I'm Heather. I've heard a lot about you from my daughter. I heard you've been dating for 10 years. "Yes, I met her when I was preparing for the teacher certification exam," I replied. "Mother, didn't I tell you he passed the exam on the first try? Isn't it fantastic?" Heather interjected. "It's fantastic," her mother responded. "And you, Heather, failed the exams 8 times. But don't be ashamed of that, you're not a fool." "Oh, Mother. Here you go again," Heather sighed. "You never took the exam. So you're saying it's so difficult that someone like Heather could pass it?" "Jeremy, please stop." "Alright, I'll stop. Even though you're my daughter, I can't bear it. I don't even know how it makes me feel," her mother admitted. "Mother, you should stop too. Since you allowed me to be positive and accept where you would get a teacher as your son-in-law. Didn't you say you'd like to have a teacher as your son-in-law?" "Well, that was before I knew my in-laws are cleaners," her mother replied. "I'm sorry if I offended you, but as you know, I'm also husbandless, so if I'm biased, it's because I'm so tired of people. Because I don't like what other people say. So honestly, I wasn't happy to hear that you're just a spoiled child. But also, your mother has that kind of job. People are like that, they prefer the best if possible. However, not all human relationships are like mine, so I'm trying to give up my greed and accept it. So, Heather, please try to understand. If you live together as a family, we'll become closer one day." I don't know how to respond, I said. She told me she couldn't give her approval, and that made me feel uncomfortable. There was one more thing that caught me off guard. "By the way, where do you live now? Is it your property?" "Yes, I recently bought an apartment, and I live there with my mother," I replied. "So what happens to your house when you get married?" I apologized. My mother was curious and asked many questions about the wedding, which made me a bit embarrassed. "Mother, why are you asking so many questions? You're embarrassing, Jeremy. Is the wedding real?" My future father-in-law also joined in the questions. "So, what are your plans for your mother after the wedding?" I was a little surprised by their frankness. Of course, it's natural for them to be curious, but there was a fine line between being honest and being rude. I was concerned about how to answer these questions. but they kept pushing the boundaries. Finally, I couldn't contain my response. I hope Heather also doesn't want to receive help from our families when we get married. We want to start on our own, and I believe it's good to climb up in life gradually, the best way possible. Regarding your earlier question, my mother worked hard to raise me, and it was thanks to her that I was able to buy that condominium. It belongs to her, and I think it's right for me to move out when I get married. Yes. Maybe it's because you're a teacher, but you seem very determined. My future mother-in-law seemed persistent in her opinion. Can I speak frankly? I'm thinking about your mother, which is great, but I think differently. If you were to ask your mother, she would probably say the same as me. Marriage is not a game. It's not about getting married at any cost. People will point fingers at your mother and me, saying we're marrying you without any consideration. I'm sure your mother doesn't want that either. I wish for a luxurious wedding more than most because I raised my daughter for it. I want people to see that she married well. I was surprised by her bluntness, but my girlfriend tried to calm the situation. Mom, can we discuss this later, please? My mother-in-law replied directly to Heather. Why do you always say we should discuss things later? You won't have your wedding after I die. I just want the beginning to be equal. Her words were simple but somehow unpleasant. My girlfriend told me her mother had always been like that, speaking her mind. But when we got married, she wasn't very interested in us. She asked me to put up with it until the wedding, but I was starting to get worried. So, I decided to share my feelings with my mother. When she heard what I had to say, my mother didn't seem disturbed. She smiled and said, "Well, is it that Heather's mother is so straightforward? Is it because she's highly educated?" I wasn't offended by what she said, but it was bothering me. My future mother-in-law seemed so calculating and insisted she was being honest. But it felt like she was openly underestimating us. My girlfriend tried to reassure me. Don't worry about it. Mom is like that. She's straightforward, but deep down, she wants the best for us. I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable with the situation. But I decided to stay calm. After all, after 10 years of dating, I was confident that we could overcome any challenge. After all, what is love if not the ability to accept and understand each other's differences? My mother was clearly uncomfortable with the idea of living alone in that large condominium and taking care of it. She argued, "Are you telling me to live alone in this big space and do the cleaning? I get tired just thinking about doing that after you get married. I'll move to a small studio for sure." I was a bit surprised by her reaction. "Why don't you live here, as you're at home recently? Or maybe sell the condominium and use the money. People like it when their children buy a condominium for them," I suggested. My mother continued to talk. "Why are you saying this? I earn my own money, and I can live well without a condominium like this. Are you underestimating me?" I reassured her. "It's not that I'm underestimating you. I just want to be a good son and take care of you. To me, you're being a good mother by having a happy marriage. If you get married and are loved and live well, that's the best." My mother tried to argue. "So, you're going to do everything your mother-in-law says, right?" I interrupted her. "No. I don't want to ask for help from you just because I'm getting married. Why are you so worried that my mother doesn't have money? Why are you saying it like that?" She continued, "Parents are also disappointed when their children don't depend on them. Let me take this opportunity to spend a lot on my son. I've worked and earned money all my life to be able to do this." I had no more words for my mother at that moment. I knew that if I continued to argue, she would be disappointed. So, I decided to reflect on the marriage and its dynamics. I didn't know if it would be a bad relationship, but at that moment, I found out that my mother was cleaning the building where my future mother-in-law's store was located. It made me a little uncomfortable because, contrary to my concerns, my mother-in-law was helping her, bringing her coffee and even having lunch with her. My mother-in-law was trying to get closer to my mother. My mother told me that my mother-in-law seemed like a pleasant person, despite her direct words. Finally, I felt relieved and decided to follow the path my future mother-in-law wanted. However, my girlfriend made a cautious request. "Darling, I hope you don't misunderstand me, but I'd like to talk to you about something. I'm okay with living with your mother as her daughter, but if she ever decides she wants to live alone, can we live in your house? I don't mind if your mother changes her mind and wants to live with us." I listened attentively and understood her concerns. "Of course, my love. I have no problem living together in my house if my mother decides to move. We can split the mortgage payment, as if it were rent. I don't see any problem with that. Single quotes. I was willing to make things work. My girlfriend added, "Just think positively. If we give up one thing, we can achieve another. We have to find a place to live anyway." Deep down, I was worried about what the future held for us, but at that time, there was no way to predict what was to come. Love and understanding between us were our greatest allies as we prepared for the next chapter of our lives. I thought I would be happy, so we had a luxurious wedding at a hotel, which aroused the envy of many. Even without enough money for a honeymoon in Europe, we went to Europe thanks to my mother-in-law. However, my mother-in-law acted as if she had financed the entire luxurious wedding. She went around boasting, as if she had organized everything from start to finish with her own money and skills. She even lied, claiming she had prepared the condominium I bought for my mother, which became our newlywed home. However, I didn't know this at the time, and I began to feel discomfort with her exaggerated behavior. She started calling me constantly, saying things like, "Darling, did you pass by that restaurant in town on your way home from work today?" A restaurant? I have a meeting with some college friends today. When I bragged about having a husband as a professor, my friends couldn't wait to meet you. Just come for a quick meal, and then you can leave. My mother-in-law would call me every time I met college friends, neighbors, acquaintances from the store, and so on. And wherever we were, she would sit with me and boast about me. The problem was that when she was with other people, she acted differently. She used to say things like, "Hey, the people around me are looking forward to meeting my son-in-law. So I've been talking a lot about you, but, to be honest, what do you have to offer besides your job? When I look closely, you seem to act snobbish toward my husband because he passed the exam in one go, while my wife failed several times. The most pathetic thing is discouraging your husband. You should keep that in mind. I would never do that. If I felt that way, I wouldn't have married him." I was uncomfortable with her change in attitude. She continued, "Anyway, if you have any issues, don't blame them on my mother." "Sorry, but Jeremy didn't say any of that," she insisted. "What do you mean he said he would consider living in my mother's house? What are you talking about?" she continued. "So you're saying my wife is now paying the mortgage for my mother's house? Nothing is free in this world. If you don't like it, we'll have to find a house to rent or a monthly rental. We'll have to spend money anyway. So, what's the problem with paying the monthly rent for the condominium that will be your mother's home? Jeremy considers the mortgage payments as rent, so he's paying for it," she, dissatisfied, continued. "Why is a professor like you so vague with math? You don't need to give the condominium to your mother. Anyway, your mother and I have already spent half of our lives. We're not interested in greed or wealth. Just pay off the loan with both of you earning money, as you're doing now. And when the value of that house goes up, we'll sell it and move to a bigger place. Yes, that's what a person like your mother, who lives alone, needs to do." I felt hurt by her words. "Why are you saying this? It hurts my feelings," she replied. "Why would you feel hurt by something like that? I absolutely can't tolerate it." After this incident, I felt that my relationship with my mother-in-law was deteriorating rapidly. My wife was suffering being in the middle of our disagreements. One day, she asked me if her mother was traveling to Hawaii with a college friend, and if I could help with some of her expenses. I wasn't getting along with her, so I wasn't pleased with her request. Still, I didn't want her to get caught in the middle of it all, so I transferred a large sum of money to her account, about $1,000. However, my mother-in-law's reaction was not as enthusiastic as I expected. She simply said, "I checked my bank account. Are you showing off after sending only $1,000? Is that why you're calling? You don't need to worry about the money. You don't know anything. Hang up." I stared at the phone, shocked by her reaction. It seemed like I deserved a reprimand. It was difficult to deal with this situation, worried about the lack of understanding between us. I called my husband and asked if $1,000 was too little. He sighed and said he would handle the situation, but he was busy at the moment and needed to hang up. The situation was becoming increasingly tense. I got angry once again. Why should I spend money and be criticized, even now? I questioned whether the money I spent was a waste. However, something happened that made me reflect on the life I have now. That day was my mother-in-law's birthday. It was her first birthday since we got married, and although I genuinely didn't want to go, I felt I needed to go to avoid disappointing my wife. However, having to worry about what to buy as a gift and how much to spend to avoid criticism made me anxious, upset about having to deal with this situation. I asked my wife what she thought. She replied casually, "Darling, I think the most important thing is the gesture. Think about my mother. I always do it with sincere intention, but I get reprimanded for it. I still feel embarrassed, even if I try to give her money to spend. I don't know how much to give. And even if I want to buy a gift, I don't know what to choose." I was perplexed. I wanted to know, Do you think we should buy a luxury brand item for her every year? Isn't that simply a waste? It only happens once a year. After all, I've never given such an expensive gift to my own mother on her birthday. My wife surprised me with her response. She said, "It might be a good idea. After all, my mother deserves something special. Plus, she has always been very good to us. And this is a way to show our gratitude." The idea surprised me, but it seemed like there was no better alternative. So, I went to a luxury brand store in a department store for the first time in my life. When I saw the exorbitant prices of the handbags, I was shocked. However, I chose a handbag that seemed to be the best option and bought two of them. One for my mother-in-law and one for my mother. The price of the handbags was equivalent to almost a month's salary. But I felt relieved thinking that my mother-in-law would surely like the gift. After all, I wanted to give a beautiful gift to my mother as well. However, something unexpected happened. My mother-in-law reacted unexpectedly. She said, "Why did you buy a luxury brand for a change? It seems like you finally changed your mind." "Jeremy thinks a lot of you, Mom. You're the only one who doesn't understand her for no reason." I was stunned by her words and replied, "I apologize, Jeremy. I just wanted to do something nice for you. I don't see any reason to get so upset. I bought these handbags with my own money." Jeremy continued, "You can't stop my mom. Don't be like that. We're going out to eat, and I found a great place while I was busy. Let's go." We had made a reservation in advance and got into the car. In the car, my mother-in-law saw a bag from the same brand and asked what it was. I replied, "I was buying your gift. I also bought one for my mother." Jeremy wasn't pleased and asked, "Are you sure you didn't get something better for me? I bought the same one." She continued, "What? So, you're giving your mom the same handbag you gave me? That's so ridiculous. What are you thinking, treating me like your mother? What kind of luxury brand is suitable for someone who cleans a building? It's like giving a homeless person a pearl necklace." I tried to explain, "Hey, I'm not going to take the bag to the same building as your mother. I'm with my mother-in-law, who cleans the building. I'm worried someone might find out." She wasn't satisfied. "You're saying we're both carrying the same thing. Never forget, you're really trying to harm me." I tried to explain myself, but my wife intervened. She locked the car doors and said, "What are you doing? You heard what my mother said. This isn't something you should argue about on her birthday. Why did you buy the bags on the same day? Her birthday isn't a national holiday or anything. You could have bought the gift on another day." She continued the argument. "Why did you buy two bags on the same day? Is her birthday that special? Does she deserve such an expensive gift? Be reasonable." My wife tried to calm the situation. "Wait here for a moment. I'll buy a birthday cake and apologize to her. Tell her you'll return the bag to my mother and buy another one secretly. She won't take it to work anyway." "Right," my mother-in-law was concerned about me. "Are you saying this in the right place? I'll return hers and give the one I bought to my mother." "You're going too far. Don't you think my mother deserves this? She's done a lot for you." After the heated argument with my mother-in-law, I grabbed the bags and left my wife's car. I drove to my mother's house, where she was shocked to see me crying. I told her everything that had happened during this time, and her face darkened. My mother knew very well who that woman was, as my mother-in-law's reputation for rudeness and unpleasantness was known in the building where she worked. She not only ignored me but also treated other staff and customers rudely. There were many rumors about her behavior. My mother, concerned about the situation, advised me, "Jeremy, if you want to get a divorce, go ahead. Nowadays, divorce is no longer a big taboo. If you think it's not right for you, it's wiser to end the marriage quickly. And I have something to tell you." She went to the closet and retrieved a document, which was a contract from the building where my mother-in-law worked. The name on the contract was my mother's. She explained, "I received a significant inheritance from your grandfather, and he left me the building. I know that my mother-in-law manages it, so I bought the building to help her. Furthermore, I noticed that your mother-in-law's lease was about to expire next month, so I planned to offer her better conditions." I was surprised by the revelation and asked, "You bought the building, even after she said you were not an owner, but just a cleaner?" My mother replied, "Yes, I bought it. I wanted to help, but now, with this situation, I'm going to make her leave. Are you sure you won't regret your decision?" I decided to move forward and get a divorce. My mother didn't reveal to my mother-in-law that she was the new owner and sent a formal notice of lease termination. However, when my mother-in-law found out, her attitude completely changed. She came to my mother and even knelt, begging her to let her stay. My mother, being a person with a big heart, reconsidered the situation and said, "Mother-in-law, why is it that now that you know I have money, I look different to you? Wasn't it you who told my son that I was like a beggar without a home? But in my eyes, you're a stranger who acts so rudely. I will make sure my son divorces your daughter. And you better leave my building since your lease has ended." My mother tried to ease the situation. "Please don't get angry. Let's talk about it. We were wrong, we're a family. Why don't we convince our children to live together happily? Why let them get divorced? It doesn't make sense." And so, the complicated situation began to take a turn. My mother, who was now the building's owner, tried to find a solution that would bring the family together and avoid the divorce. The outcome of this story was yet to come, with many twists and challenges along the way. I'll be fair with Jeremy and with you as well, no matter what. I won't be deceived twice. Don't say that, and go take care of your daughter. Do you think I liked your daughter, who isn't as smart as my son? My mother quit her cleaning job and started managing the building. My mother-in-law would come to see her every day, begging, but my mother would ignore her. My wife, I don't know about my mother-in-law since I was preparing for a divorce, and she apologized to me. But I didn't change my mind when I gently told you to pack your things and leave. I met with a lawyer to get a divorce. Dear, please think again. Honestly, I didn't do anything wrong. We didn't have any issues, so why do you need to separate? Your ties with your mother, is that what you're saying? Well, that's fine by me. My family is more important. Why have I suddenly become more important than your mother? Is it because my mother owns a building now? You were this kind of person from the beginning. And you're looking down on me just because your mother has some money now. You shouldn't be like this. Who would marry a supposed son like you? Have you forgotten where you come from? If it weren't for me, you couldn't have gotten married. And I paid the mortgage of this unit, so I also have a share of the property here. Have you forgotten that even if you paid the mortgage, you said this apartment could be given to my mother? You said you were living in your mother-in-law's house. I let you stay here because you had no skills. Why are you saying something different now? So, I'm about to be kicked out. You're leaving me high and dry. You're nothing but a thief. A thief. Okay, then do it according to the law. I know I couldn't have an uncontested divorce if we did it according to the law. I have a lot to say. I heard from my mother that your mother has been going around saying that she bought this condominium, even though you knew that my mother gave me the blinds. I won't tolerate you any longer. We had to fight in court, and both sides of the lawyers started appealing vigorously. My ex-mother-in-law's ridiculous claims became the decisive evidence, and the judgment was in my favor. I should be compensated for my mental suffering when my ex-mother-in-law's atrocities were explained in court as if she was ashamed and couldn't hold her head up. Other people were in the courtroom to watch. About my ex-mother-in-law. These people were my ex-husband's paternal grandparents who gave the store to my ex-mother-in-law. A few days later, they came to the store and told my ex-mother-in-law that when the contract ended, the deposit they paid should be returned to them. My mother and my ex-mother-in-law protested, saying they were treated unfairly and shouted so much that the whole building heard their screams. After that, my ex-mother-in-law had to leave the building with nothing. She was embarrassed in front of the other traders in the building, and she even had to pay me, so she had to move out of her condo unit to pay me her deposit. She came to see my mother and me again, begging for forgiveness. When we witnessed her true personality, we wouldn't accept her. My ex-wife, who is so selfish, blames her mother, saying she ruined her life. It was like roses and left her when his mother was moving out of the apartment. He seemed so pathetic for doing that. I thought it was a waste of time. To have loved her for over 10 years and even married her is no longer my concern, so I don't think about it now. I'm living a normal life as I wanted because my mother said that divorce is not something to brag about, but it's also not something to be ashamed of. So, I'm living happily, although I feel embarrassed to say it. But my retirement worries are less now. My mother, who is the owner of the building, has also become the president of a cleaning company, and through word of mouth, she has many clients. So, she's enjoying making money from it. I can't see my mother as often, but I'm happy to see her enjoying her life. Cleaning brings a sense of satisfaction when you see a dirty spot, and when it's clean, you feel clean, and it gives you a better view of life. I feel that cleaning is good therapy. Thank you for listening to my story. I genuinely wish happiness to you. Please root for me and write your words of wisdom in the comments section by pressing like and subscribing. It's a great help for me. I thought it was a waste of time to have loved her for over 10 years and even married her. It's not my concern anymore, so I don't think about it now. I'm living a normal life, as I wanted. As my mother said, that divorce is not something to brag about, but it's also not something to be ashamed of.